feel pretty good tonight, and I should, because today I was named Playmate of the Month.
Dean Martin was the absolute epitome of cool. Nicknamed the King of Cool, he's still regarded as one of the most popular and influential entertainers of the 20th century. On stage, he was the smooth-as-silk crooner with a drink in one hand and a mischievous twinkle in his eye. Off stage, he was a charter member of the legendary Rat Pack, a man whose charm was as famous as his voice. He was the guy every man wanted to be, and the man every woman wanted to be with. His public persona was all about effortless charm and living a life without a single care. But behind that easygoing smile was a private life of incredible complexity. It was a whirlwind of romance and heartbreak that included 3 wives and a whole string of famous girlfriends. He was also a father to 8 children, each trying to navigate a life forged in the massive shadow of a legend. His kids have spoken about a dedicated family man, a father who, despite his monumental fame, tried to be home for dinner every single night. So, what was the truth behind the curtain? What happened to the women who shared his life? And what became of his 8 children after the spotlight faded and the applause died down? Join us as we uncover the stories of love, loss, and legacy in the sprawling, complicated, and fascinating family of Dean Martin. Dean Martin's romantic life was just as much a part of his public identity as his music. It was a story told in 3 distinct chapters, with 3 marriages that tracked his career from a rising star to a global icon, and finally to a man grappling with his own legend. He was married 3 times, fathered 7 biological children, and adopted 1, creating a large blended family that was a constant anchor in his otherwise turbulent life. Dean Martin's first wife was Elizabeth Ann MacDonald, known to everyone as Betty. They married in 1941, long before Dean Martin was a name synonymous with Hollywood royalty. Back then, he was still Dino Paul Crocetti, a young singer with a ton of ambition, and she was with him right as he began his ascent. Their marriage lasted 8 years and gave them 4 children: Craig, Claudia, Gail, and Dana. This was the family he built before the Rat Pack, before solo stardom, and before the pressures of mega fame started testing the foundations of their home. As Dean's career exploded, especially his partnership with comedian Jerry Lewis, the marriage buckled under the strain. The demands of his growing celebrity, long absences from home, and the temptations that came with a life in the spotlight proved to be too much. The couple divorced in 1949, a painful end to the chapter that saw him transform from a determined young performer into a household name. After the divorce, Betty was granted custody of the children, but as Dean's life settled with his new wife, the kids eventually came to live with him and his growing family. Dean Martin didn't stay single for long. Just a week after his divorce from Betty was finalized, he married Jean Bieger in 1949. A stunning former Orange Bowl queen, Jean would become his longest-serving partner, staying by his side as his wife for 24 years. This marriage really was the golden era of Dean Martin. It coincided with the height of his Rat Pack fame, his wildly successful TV variety show, and his status as one of the most beloved entertainers in the world. Jean wasn't just his wife. She was the matriarch of his growing dynasty. She raised not only her own 3 children with Dean Paul, Richie, and Gina, but also the 4 children from his marriage to Betty. Their Beverly Hills home was the stuff of legend, a place where Hollywood's elite would gather. The kids grew up with Uncle Frank Sinatra and Uncle Sammy Davis Jr. as regular visitors. Daughter Deanna Martin remembers a household filled with music, laughter, and a strong sense of family values, despite all the glamorous chaos. For 2 decades, Jean and Dean were seen as one of Hollywood's most solid couples. But beneath the surface, the same pressures that ended his first marriage were at play again. Dean's public persona as a hard-drinking playboy, though mostly a stage gimmick, was rooted in a lifestyle that was tough to maintain. The endless touring, the Vegas shows, and the constant attention eventually took their toll. Jean filed for divorce, and the split was finalized in 1973, marking the end of an era for the Martin family. In 1973, at 55 years old, Dean Martin married for the third and final time. His bride was Catherine Hahn, a 26-year-old receptionist. This marriage was short-lived, lasting only 3 years before they divorced in 1976. During their time together, Dean adopted Catherine's daughter, Sasha, officially making her his 8th child. Though the marriage itself was brief, his commitment to Sasha was not. His son Richie later wrote in his memoir that Sasha was never considered a stepsister. She was simply family. Even after the divorce, Dean made sure Sasha was always cared for and remained a key part of the Martin clan. Interestingly, after his third divorce, Dean and his second wife, Jean, reconciled. While they never remarried, they remained incredibly close for the rest of his life, bound by their shared history, their children, and a deep, enduring affection. This complex, interwoven tapestry of marriages, divorces, and reconciliations paints a picture of a man who, for all his romantic escapades, really just craved the stability and love of family. While his 3 marriages were the foundation of his family life, Dean Martin's King of Cool persona was fueled by a string of high-profile relationships and rumored flings with some of Hollywood's most beautiful women. These romances, which happened both between and during his marriages, cemented his reputation as an absolutely irresistible ladies' man. Angie Dickinson. One of his most famous co-stars was Angie Dickinson, and the two shared some sizzling chemistry on screen in the 1959 Western classic Rio Bravo. That on-screen electricity sparked rumors of an off-screen affair, a common thing for the dashing star. Dickinson, a powerhouse actress herself, was a perfect match for Martin's charisma, and their rumored romance only added to the mystique of both stars. Elizabeth Montgomery. The beloved star of Bewitched, Elizabeth Montgomery, was another actress linked to Martin in the early 1960s. Their rumored affair supposedly happened while Martin was still married to his second wife, Jeanne. The whispers about their relationship highlighted the growing cracks in his golden-era marriage and showed the challenges his family faced under the constant glare of the public eye. Phyllis Davis. After his third divorce, Martin had a more public and long-term relationship with actress Phyllis Davis. Their romance lasted for several years in the mid to late 1970s. Davis, known for her roles in shows like Love, American Style, and Vega, was a regular presence by his side during this period. Friends noted it was a more settled and steady partnership than many of his earlier flings. Dinah Shore. Back in the mid-1950s, during his marriage to Jean, Martin was also linked to the hugely popular singer and TV personality Dinah Shore. A star of equal magnitude, Shore's alleged involvement with Martin was exactly the kind of Hollywood gossip that captivated audiences. It spoke to the small, insulated world of superstars, where paths constantly crossed and relationships often got messy. Lori Nelson. A beautiful starlet of the 1950s, actress Lori Nelson was another name romantically connected to Dean Martin. Their rumored relationship in 1955 happened during the height of his partnership with Jerry Lewis and his booming solo career. It was all part of the narrative that built his image, the handsome, talented star who could have any woman he wanted. June Allison. One of the earliest rumored romances of his career was with actress June Allison around 1948, right as his first marriage to Betty McDonald was falling apart. Allison was America's sweetheart, and the idea of her with the up-and-coming crooner was tantalizing. This alleged affair marked the beginning of a pattern where Martin's love life became as much a topic of public fascination as his actual career. These women, and plenty of others, were part of the whirlwind that was Dean Martin's life. While some were just fleeting encounters and others were more serious relationships, they all contributed to the public myth of a man who lived life on his own terms, a symbol of masculine charm in Hollywood's golden age. Dean Martin was the father of 8 children, a sprawling, blended family that he loved more than anything. Despite his larger-than-life persona, his children remember a man who was surprisingly present and deeply caring. He was home every night for dinner, his daughter Deanna recalled, painting a picture that's a sharp contrast to his public image. But growing up a Martin wasn't always easy. Each of his 8 kids had to find their own way, navigating their father's legacy, the pull of show business, and the pain of personal tragedies. Dean's first 4 children were born during his initial climb to stardom. They saw his fame explode and his first marriage dissolve, and were then raised by his second wife, Jean, creating a unique and complex family dynamic from the get-go. Dean's eldest child, Stephen Craig Martin, chose a life in the business but deliberately stayed behind the camera. Born in 1942, Craig found his footing not as a performer, but as a television producer and production manager. He got his start in the late 1960s working on his dad's own hit series, The Dean Martin Show, and later worked on shows like Sha Na Na. Craig's life was also touched by Hollywood in another way. He married Carol Costello, the daughter of legendary comedian Lou Costello. Their union was a remarkable merging of 2 classic Hollywood families, but Craig's life was also marked by deep tragedy. In March 1987, he suffered an unimaginable double blow. His younger brother, Dean Paul Martin, was killed in a plane crash. Just 8 days later, his wife Carol died suddenly from a stroke at only 48 years old. After these devastating losses, Craig Martin largely withdrew from public life. He has since lived very privately, though his sister Deanna occasionally posts tributes to her sweet brother. Dean's eldest daughter, Claudia, born on March 16, 1944, was bitten by the entertainment bug early. She appeared in movies like For Those Who Think Young and on popular TV shows of the time, including My 3 Sons and The Donna Reed Show. She fully embraced the life of a performer, following in her famous father's footsteps. Claudia's personal life was tumultuous. She married 3 times, including to actor Keel Martin, with whom she had her only child, a daughter named Jessie. After her acting career wound down, she and her last husband settled in Reno, Nevada, where they ran a printing business. Tragically, Claudia's life was cut short. She passed away from breast cancer on February 16, 2001, at the age of 56. Her death was another devastating blow to the Martin family. Barbara Gail Martin, known simply as Gail, also dipped her toes into show business, often appearing on her father's television show. Born in 1945, she had a lovely singing voice and even co-hosted her dad's summer replacement series on NBC. She was a familiar face to viewers of The Dean Martin Show, sometimes performing alongside her famous father. But unlike some of her siblings, Gail didn't pursue a long-term career in the spotlight. She chose to lead a more private life, marrying and raising a family away from the cameras. Of all Dean's children, Deanna Martin has become the most prominent keeper of her father's flame. Born on August 19, 1948, Deanna grew up idolizing her dad and his Rat Pack pals. She's an accomplished singer and actress in her own right, with a career that has spanned decades. She has released several successful albums, including Memories Are Made of This, which features her own take on her father's most beloved songs. Deanna is also a New York Times best-selling author. Her 2004 memoir, Memories Are Made of This, Dean Martin, through his daughter's eyes, gave the world an intimate, loving look at her father. It challenged the public image of a detached, hard-drinking womanizer and revealed the warm, funny, and dedicated family man she knew. She speaks about him with immense pride, sharing stories of how he taught her to perform. Now in her 70s, Deanna continues to tour the world, performing his music and sharing his story, making sure the legacy of Dean Martin is passed down to new generations. Dean's 3 children with his second wife, Jean, were born at the absolute peak of his fame. They grew up in a world of unbelievable celebrity, where their home was a constant hub of A-list stars and their father was one of the most famous men on the planet. Dean Paul Martin, often called Dino, was the golden boy of the Martin family. Born November 17, 1951, he was handsome, charismatic, and good at pretty much everything he tried. As a teenager, he found pop stardom with his friends Desi Arnaz Jr. and Billy Hinchy in the group Dino, Desi and Billy. He was also a talented athlete who played tennis professionally. He later turned to acting, even earning a Golden Globe nomination for his role in the 1979 film Players. Dino married actress Olivia Hussey and later Olympic figure skater Dorothy Hamill. But his true passion was flying. He got his pilot's license at 16 and eventually joined the California Air National Guard, rising to the rank of captain. His father was immensely proud of him. Tragically, this passion led to his death. On March 23, 1987, during a routine training mission, the F-4 Phantom jet he was piloting crashed into California's San Bernardino Mountains during a snowstorm. Dean Paul Martin was killed instantly. He was only 35. Richie Martin, born September 1953, also followed his father and older brother into the music industry. In the 1970s, he released an album with Carl Wilson of the Beach Boys, who would later become his brother-in-law when he married Richie's sister, Gina. In the 90s, Richie took his late brother Dean Paul's place in a new version of the band Dino, Daisy and Billy. Like his sister Deanna, Richie was also a keeper of his family's history. In 2002, he published his own memoir, That's Amore, A Son Remembers Dean Martin, sharing his side of growing up in the famous household. For nearly a decade, he toured with a tribute show dedicated to his father's music. Richie had 3 daughters, Pepper, Montana, and Rio. Sadly, on August 3, 2016, Richie Martin was found dead at his home in Utah at the age of 62. His sister Deanna mourned him as one of the sweetest souls I have ever known. Dean and Jean's youngest child, Gina Martin, born in 1956, has largely chosen to live her life outside the spotlight. While she's made occasional appearances related to her family's legacy, she has kept a much more private life than her siblings. For a time, she was married to Carl Wilson of the Beach Boys, connecting her family even more deeply with the music world. Family members describe Gina as a warm and unifying presence, an anchor who helps maintain their family traditions and closeness. Sasha Martin is Dean's youngest child, adopted during his brief third marriage to Catherine Horn. Even though the marriage was short, Dean's commitment to Sasha was lifelong. He embraced her as his own, and the entire family followed his lead. As Richie wrote, "We were always one family, the Martins." Sasha decided to try her hand at acting and appeared on the soap opera Guiding Light in the late 1990s and had a small role in the Howard Stern biopic Private Parts. While she hasn't pursued a high-profile acting career, she remains a cherished member of the Martin family. For all the highs of his legendary career and the drama of his love life, the single event that truly defined Dean Martin's final years was an unimaginable tragedy, the death of his son, Dean Paul. Friends and family all agree that losing his golden boy in 1987 shattered him in a way that nothing else ever could. It was the turning point from which he never really recovered. Dean Paul was just 35 when his F-4 Phantom jet disappeared from radar during a routine flight in a snowstorm. For days, his family, including a frantic Dean, waited for news. 6 days later, the wreckage was found. The jet had slammed into the side of a mountain at roughly 400 miles per hour, killing both Dean Paul and his crewmate instantly. The impact on Dean Martin was immediate and devastating. The man whose entire public persona was built on being carefree and happy became a shadow of his former self. Friends said he had a broken heart that never healed. Author William Keck, who befriended Martin in his later years, described the change starkly. Dean Martin's final years were very, very sad after he lost his son. It was like looking at a candle without a flame. The spark was just gone. That effortless charm gave way to a quiet, profound grief. He became more and more reclusive. He had been on a reunion tour with his old friends Frank Sinatra and Sammy Davis Jr., but after his son's death, he just couldn't do it anymore. He left the tour, a move that reportedly caused a rift in his long friendship with Sinatra, who couldn't fully grasp the depth of his friend's pain. In the years that followed, Dean Martin mostly retreated from public life. He was often seen dining alone at his favorite restaurant, a stark contrast to the boisterous, crowd-filled nights of his Rat Pack days. The man who was the life of the party now preferred to be alone. The loss of Dean Paul was the final tragic act in a life that had seemed from the outside to be so charmed. It revealed the vulnerable man behind the cool facade, a father whose heart was irrevocably broken. In September 1993, Dean Martin, a lifelong heavy smoker, was diagnosed with lung cancer. Doctors told him surgery could prolong his life, but he refused. The man who had faced down audiences and critics for 50 years seemed ready to let go. His health declined quickly, made worse by the deep depression that had never left him after his son's death. On Christmas Day 1995, at the age of 78, Dean Martin died of acute respiratory failure at his home in Beverly Hills. In a final, poignant tribute, the bright lights of the Las Vegas Strip were dimmed in his honor, an entire city paying its respects to the man who helped build its legend. Dean Martin's legacy is far more complicated than just that of a singer or an actor. He was a cultural icon, the embodiment of a certain kind of easy, masculine cool that's been copied 1,000 times but never duplicated. He was the crooner whose voice could melt hearts, the comedian whose timing was perfect, and the movie star with an easy, magnetic presence. But behind the persona, behind the glass of apple juice he famously pretended was whiskey, was a man of deep contradictions. He was a quiet man who played the part of a loud extrovert. He was known as a womanizer, yet his children remember a devoted father who was home for dinner every night. He cultivated an image of not caring about anything, yet he was devastated by creative disputes and utterly broken by the loss of his son. Today, his legacy is carried on, most visibly by his daughter Diana, who tirelessly works to keep his music and memory alive. His surviving children and many grandchildren are the living embodiment of his truest, most cherished role, that of a father. They tell the story of a man who, for all his fame and fortune, found his greatest joy and his deepest sorrow in his family. The King of Cool may have taken his final bow, but the music, the films, and the enduring image of Dean Martin will live on